Commander Mason Holt tasted copper every time the wind shifted. It wasn't blood though, his split lip still hurt, but iron dust scudding off the abandoned radar dishes that ringed outpost vigil in Half Moon Crescents. 5 years ago, the facility had been a jewel of Northern Defense Command, a titanium reef welded into the Alaskan permafrost to watch the stars for threats that polite committees swore would never come. 5 years ago, Holt had believed in those committees. For years, 11 months, and 6 days ago they dragged his reputation out back and shot it. The verdict back then, gross dereliction at Europa Gate, 37 dead, had flashed across every military channel inside half an hour. Senators needed a villain, admirals needed fresh funding, and the grieving families needed a face they could hate without complication. Holt's face had done nicely, lean, scarred, gray eyes that never quite blinked enough on camera. They forgot, however, to confiscate his stubbornness, and they never even suspected the bay hidden 6 levels beneath the mess hall freezer. The bay's blast doors groaned when Holt keyed in the triple-dead code, metal on metal echoing down the empty service shafts. He descended alone, breath fogging, in the sub-zero stairwell until he reached the warm blue glow pulling across the hangar floor. There she waited 40 meters of matte black angles, edges so sharp the light seemed to bleed off of them. WS-07 Wraith stood on spinal struts like a crouched raptor, wings folded in tight, nose angled toward a dream of open sky she'd never yet tasted. Holt had stolen the ship the same way desperate men steal time, 1 second at a stretch, a sensor array borrowed from an off-books salvage yard near Barrow. An engine core mock-up lifted off an unguarded flatbed outside Joint Base Elmendorf. And the crown jewel, the violet artifact recovered from a gutted recon saucer at Europa, smuggled out of evidence lockup in a crate labeled defective cryo valves. Every rivet, every plate, every clandestine quantum latch had cost Holt something: sleep, muscle, fingernails, an honorable discharge to drinking buddies who finally quit picking up the call. He'd paid anyway. Vengeance is a lousy investor. It only wires money one way. Tonight the sky burned red. At 1903 UTC, a burst went out on every public emergency band. Multiple exo contacts breaching global engagement. All assets respond. 5 minutes later, Anchorage lost downlink. -1 minutes later, Nord reported 6 orbital platforms vaporized. 11 minutes later, Holt heard the rumble rolling down from the upper atmo like God dragging chains. He snapped the flight prep routine with muscle memory sharpened by paranoia. Power up dark, boot vectorless thrusters, bleed the reactor to 85% so the surge won't trip the cloak. When the console asked for authentication, he barked, "Commander Mason Holt, Echo 65 fracture," daring the system to remember that the call sign was retired. It obeyed. Machines have the decency never to vote. Outside, crimson contrails slashed the stratosphere, alien strike craft punching holes straight through the ozone and the collective military ego of Earth. Holt watched exactly 20 seconds, enough to map the attack vectors. They were coming in waves shaped like scythes, cutting power grids first, comm hubs second, population centers third. Textbook psychological warfare. Blind the target, deaf muted, then start harvesting organs while the screams are still buffering. Textbook because Holt had written that textbook in a white paper the Joint Chiefs never cleared for daylight reading. The Wraith's engines whispered alive, no roar, no plasma glare. Just a base-level purr that made the deck plates vibrate like a big cat telling the jungle it had woken up hungry. Holt slid into the command cradle, hiss of maglocks sealing around his rib cage, spine, and femurs, the frame rig fused pilot, and ship into a single nervous system. If Holt so much as twitched, the Wraith would flinch. Systems check. He muttered, "All green, Commander," replied a voice that was not quite male, not quite female. A filter Holt had programmed to sound nothing like any human he could miss when it went silent. Above the bay, the armored roof piston open, snow whipped. Across the gap, shredded by rotor wash that wasn't there yet, Holt punched vertical thrust. The dampeners sucked the G-load down to a polite shove against his shoulders, and then the Wraith was knifing through the storm cloud and into air so thin it tasted like broken glass. He burst into low orbit in under 4 minutes, machine gun. Tracers green-white laced, the darkness far below, drawn tiny by altitude. In daylight, those would have been golf ball-sized chunks of tungsten rippling off alien hulls. Tonight they were fireflies drowning in a tide. Emergency command net. This is Admiral Breck at Atlantic Fleet HQ. Any active hulls vector to grid angle 17. Repeat angle 17. Enemy main column. Holt killed the feed. The last thing he needed was a committee shouting half-baked, firing solutions while he rewrote the rules of engagement. He rolled Wraith inverted, letting Alaska and the top third of Canada fill the canopy while starlight spilled across the dash. The cloak prismed outward chameleon, plating bending detection arrays until radars saw nothing, lidars found a ghost, and thermal scopes mistook a supercarrier for 10 cubic meters of mildly annoyed mist. But Holt didn't intend to stay hidden. Stealth is useless if you never step out of the shadows and pull a trigger. He keyed for jump jam, a micro hyper hop calibrated to pop him 40 miles above the eastern seaboard without the bright flash that usually betrays FTL optics. Space. Blurred, warning tones squawked red and orange like candy-striped crows. Then he was there, Atlantic spread below. City lights blacked out except for fire streaks and the odd Tesla coil of a collapsing substation dot in the middle of that ocean. Earth's last major fleet looked like a Boy Scout jamboree that had stumbled into a bear cave. 3 cruisers, 7 interdictors, a railgun platform half-lit, all trying to form wall, but the wall kept leaking where destroyers punched holes the size of suburbs. At the tip of the alien spear drove a ship Holt had studied until the schematics were tattooed behind his eyelids. Hero-class Leviathan, for 100 meters nose to tail, hull black basalt shot through with ruby glyphs. He'd argued, begged, bribed to get the brass to take that design seriously. They laughed, looks like a Halloween prop. One senator had joked. Tonight the prop was writing names on tombstones. Holt manually throttled power limiters, and the Wraith's dorsal land slid forward 12 feet of nothing but cobalt injection magnets and very bad manners. He sighted center mass on the Leviathan, breath held, range 160 miles, solution plotted. Weapons free, finger squeezed, a sliver of sunblue plasma stitched forward, curling space dust into spirals. Where it struck, the Leviathan's shield bubbled like napalm in a snowbank. Holt held the beam 3 seconds, long enough to let the internal oscillators dig past external plating. Then he cut. Silence. A hairline fissure glowed across the enemy flagship. It didn't explode, not yet. Holt didn't need explosions. He needed confusion. Because fear buys time, and time is the only currency that can bankrupt a superior enemy. Across wideband, screams erupted. Unknown contact flagship hull breach panicking. Hold formation. Holt smirked. The accent was guttural. Consonants welded together in a way no human larynx could pronounce. He dreamed of that accent while he lay in the snow behind Outpost Vigil, wondering if maybe the court-martial board had been right. He locked onto his second destroyer sliding starboard. Fired a spread of AP slugs, rods of depleted iron accelerated to the kind of velocity that makes math teachers cry. Each rod punched entry holes clean as knuckle jabs. Exit wounds came out vehicle-sized. The destroyer shuddered sideways, venting luminous gore before its own reactor decided implosion. Looked relaxing. Boom. There it was, the first genuine alien retreat vector recorded in Terran skies. A dozen escorts peeled off the main stack and hunted empty space where they thought a rogue Terran ship must be hiding. They never found Holt. The cloak still drank lidar like cheap bourbon. But every second they wasted thrashing was a second Admiral Breck used to restack his battered line and shove 2 cruisers down the hole Holt had punched in the Leviathan's screen. They managed. 1 concentrated salvo, 12 hypervelocity slugs at 500 kilometers per second. That was all they got before the aliens recovered, but all they needed was 1. The Leviathan detonated in white silence, horror movie quiet, like a tomb, ripping open in vacuum. For a single heartbeat, Mason Holt felt something almost like peace. Not victory, he was too pragmatic for that, but the clean click of a plan meeting reality. Then the starlight bent. He looked up and his blood went thin. The high-mind dreadnought bled into existence above lunar plane, bigger than anything astronavigation charts had ever tried to name, hull formed of fractal plates that wouldn't obey Euclidean angles. It slid forward as if pulled by tides older than physics. One pulse of red light rippled off its bow. A whale song from Hell. Every alien ship in theater froze, pivoted, oriented on Holt's coordinates. Stealth meant nothing now. The Dreadnought's ping had married his biosignature to every kill order. In the invasion stack, alright, he whispered. Round 2, he kicked engines to max burn. The Wraith held artificial gravity stuttered, restraints biting bone. Holt nosedived under a swarm of hunter mines, arced behind a battleship shaped like a spinal column, ripped its spine out with twin rail bursts, and kept moving. 2 interceptors clipped his port wing, ablative tiles shredded into glitter, damage. Alarms flooded HUD, still he kept flying, because the point of Step 1 had never been to win the war. Step 1 was to make the enemy angry enough to chase him into the exact kill box he'd built 5 years in exile. Grid Cobalt 9 sat over the dark side of the planet, 90 minutes of rotation away from any rescue, 20 obsolete weather. Satellites drifted there, or so everyone believed. Holt had cannibalized their guts long ago, replacing climate sensors with gravitic inverters tuned to one paranormal wavelength, the artifact's heartbeat. He punched the remote. 20 satellites woke, linked, cried out in a language that star stuff might speak when it dreams of knives. Space fractured. A gravity well the size of Manhattan unfolded, invisible to human eyes, but hungry as a black hole that hadn't eaten. In millennia. The first alien cruiser hit the well and crumpled like a soda can sucked into a jet turbine. The second sheared apart mid-pivot. By the third, Holt's reactors screamed hot, coolant lines glowing cherry. 2 more minutes and the Wraith would slag itself just keeping the cloak modulated, but 2 minutes was all he needed. The Dreadnought fired a lance of vermilion energy thick as a freight train. Holt rolled under it, barely the beam passing so close his cockpit instruments read sunrise. Then he punched a full-power micro-jump straight into the shadow of the gravity well. The Dreadnought followed. Momentum caught her. Mass multiplied by hubris equals inertia. The gravitational inversion swallowed the flagship's bow, flexed, then slammed shut like a cosmic bear trap. Holt didn't wait to watch. He throttled north, engines spitting luminescent debris, every warning light in the cabin flicking seizure mode red. He'd torn the bear's nose. Now every remaining predator in orbit wanted a taste of him. When the Wraith finally limped back through the upper atmosphere, Holt smelled insulation burning. He landed in a crater of boiling snow where outpost Vigil's launch chute had once been, collapsed the struts, and let the ship sink the last 3 meters into powder. Exterior cams painted a sky still flickering with firefights, but the kill ratio had flipped. Human Scrappy hissed together, desperate toward winning pockets of real estate. Because sometimes a single well-placed ghost can ruin a whole nightmare. Holt unclipped from the cradle. Knees buckled, he wiped blood from his ear, rubbed fingers together until the tremor settled. The comm unit he'd ignored all night lay on the dash, blinking. He thumbed it open. Unknown vessel. This is Fleet Ops. Identify or be fired upon. He let them sweat 10 long seconds, then key transmit. Names Mason Holt. Code Echo 65 Fracture. And if you assholes shoot me after I just saved your backside, I swear I'll haunt you from the grave. Silence. Then very softly. Copy that, Commander. Welcome home. Holt leaned back, staring at the cracked canopy where dawn was prying black sky apart with gold fingers. He felt no triumph, no vindication, only the slow creep of inevitability, because the artifact inside his ship was no longer just humming, it was singing. And if Holt could hear the melody, so could whatever nightmare had taught it the tune. Mason Holt had been cold before, but not like this. He stood on the Wraith's open hatch ramp, boots planted in 3 feet of powder, breath fogging around his face like the ghosts of choices he couldn't bury. The sun hovered low on the Alaskan horizon, throwing long bloody shadows across the ice. Somewhere behind him, the artifact was still singing low, rhythmic, almost like a tide pulsing through the hull. he hadn't powered it on. It had woken on its own inside the Wraith's cockpit. Every sensor blinked angry red. Radiation levels were spiking, magnetic fields were folding in on themselves. And Holt's own skin felt wrong, like it itched beneath the bone, as if atoms had started to remember another arrangement they liked better. The comm still buzzed with half-panicked chatter. Every channel crackled with code words he hadn't heard in 5 years. Crucible Protocol, Phantom Override, Relocation Package Delta. Translation? Someone had finally realized what Holt had stolen, and now they wanted it back. By the time the retrieval team arrived, Holt had already disabled the Wraith's ignition circuits and buried the key under 4 meters of frozen gravel. He didn't need some half-cleared spook flying off with his ship while the rest of Earth's military scrambled to figure out whether to thank him or shoot him. The VTO Ales came in low 3 Blackbirds with no insignias, their rotor noise muffled by acoustic dampeners that screamed intelligence division louder than any patch ever could. Holt didn't flinch when they landed. He just waited, arms folded, expression flat. The first boots to hit the snow belonged to a woman in a charcoal gray field coat, dark tactical pants, and a badge clipped to her vest that read only Aegis Division, Clearancy for her name. Holt would soon learn was Dr. Lyra Novick, and she was about to change everything. "You're a hard man to find," she said as the wind whipped her hood back. Her voice had a clean-edge Midwest accent, maybe Wisconsin, clipped and professional. "You know that?" "Not hard," Holt replied, "just buried." She stared past him to the Wraith's hull, her eyes flicking over the still glowing seams where the artifact pulse bled through the ship's alloy like veins in living metal. "Is it active? You tell me. It's been purring ever since. I shot that Leviathan out of orbit. Either it liked the view, or something up there saw it scream and screamed back." Dr. Novick nodded. "That would be consistent with the last activation spike." Holt's brow furrowed. "Last spike?" She stepped closer, lowered her voice. 5 years ago. Europa Gate, 12 minutes before the breach. That froze him. "You're saying?" He began. "I'm saying the artifact didn't just react to the breach, it may have caused it. The debrief happened underground." Of course it did. Aegis Division didn't operate in towers with views or high-tech labs full of windows and interns. They lived in bunkers, on deep-level access floors, with no Wi-Fi, and interrogated people in rooms that smelled like disinfectant and fear. Holt sat at the table in an insulated interrogation cell. No cuffs, they weren't treating him like a prisoner, not yet, but the 4 cameras pointed at his face didn't suggest friendly intentions either. Dr. Novick entered alone, carrying a single data pad and a cup of what smelled vaguely like burnt coffee. She set the pad down, clicked it on, and rotated it toward him. The screen showed a waveform. Not just any waveform, a harmonic signature. Unique, complex, beautiful in a way only dangerous things ever are. "This," she said, "is the artifact's emission pattern from Europa Gate. It matches almost exactly the current signature pulsing from the Wraith's hull." Holt stared. "You said 'cause the breach. What does that mean?" Dr. Novick tapped another image, this one a composite scan of the alien dreadnought from orbit. Hidden in its hull was a crystalline core, shaped almost exactly like the artifact Holt had smuggled off Europa 5 years ago. "They've got one too," he whispered. "They've got hundreds," Novick corrected. "We've counted at least 16 across fleet command vessels, and we believe there may be a central one somewhere inside what's left of the lunar basin." Holt leaned forward, jaw tight. "So these artifacts aren't just relics, they're nodes, beacons, worse," Novick said, quietly now. "They're keys." She told him the truth in pieces. The Europa breach hadn't just been a communications blackout or some freak tactical failure. The base had picked up a signal of resonance from the artifact discovered weeks earlier during a deep heistic. Standard science team sent it up the chain. No urgency. Then the artifact activated. No explosion, no attack, just a wave, an impossible frequency that pinged through Earth's outer satellite belt, skipped through the Oort cloud, and lit up alien tech that had been dormant for a very, very long time. "They didn't find us," Novick explained. We rang their damn doorbell, and I'm the guy you hung out to dry," Holt said, his voice a mix of bitterness and disbelief. "She didn't deny it. You were the only one who saw the connection before we even understood the implications. If you hadn't pulled the plug early, destroyed that uplink, they would have gotten in sooner, and I still got court-martialed for it." He spat because Aegis needed a scapegoat, she said plainly. "Our real mission was containment, not confession." At 03:00 hours, the briefing room lights dimmed, and Holt stood before a 3D projection of Earth with orbital patterns drawn in spirals, some human, some alien. The current estimates were chilling. 65% of Earth's orbital defense assets destroyed or disabled, 40 to confirmed alien warship clusters in low orbit. One unidentified signal transmitting from deep lunar crust unreachable by current excavation means ... and beneath it all. The slow, synchronized awakening of artifacts around the globe. Some were in vaults, some were buried under cities. Some terrifyingly were already integrated into experimental energy grids, weapons platforms, or R&D labs. They were everywhere. And their frequency was climbing, not just pulsing anymore, but calling. Holt tapped the projection. "So what happens if they all reach resonance?" Novik's mouth was a hard line. "Global harmonics collapse. Gravitational inversion, reality destabilization, or to use a more popular term, end of the world," Holt finished. She nodded. "But we have an option," she added. "The Wraith's artifact is different. Its emissions are counterphased. For some reason, it doesn't sing with them. It sings against them." Holt frowned. "You're saying it's jamming them? Or fighting them? We don't know yet. But your ship may be the only node that resists the harmonic cascade. So now you want to weaponize it," he said. "No," she said. "Then, we want you to." The mission was insane. Holt said so 5 times in 5 different ways. He was to fly the Wraith directly into lunar orbit, avoid or engage any enemy signals, penetrate beneath the moon's surface using a modified gravitic bore drill, and insert the Wraith's artifact directly into the alien lattice inside the dreadnought hibernating there. That's right, the dreadnought they'd seen earlier, just a scout. The real one, the prime ship, was still asleep. And if it woke, well, Novik had said the Leviathan made a city disappear in under 12 seconds. This one makes Leviathans. The Wraith wasn't ready, but neither was Earth. So Holt climbed back into his cockpit, fingers flexing over the controls he'd built with desperation and spite and impossible hope. The artifact sat behind him, glowing soft purple now. Almost comfortingly, he keyed the intercom. "Flight command, this is Echo 6-5 Fracture. Clearance granted for lunar injection burn. Lock vectors copy. Commander Holt, Godspeed." He smiled tightly. If God wanted us fast, he would have built a better ship. The Wraith burned through the atmosphere like a reborn comet. The stars peeled back. The moon rose dead ahead, closer than it had any right to be, and deep beneath its scarred surface, something turned, something old, something vast, and something that had just realized it was being hunted. The silence on the dark side of the moon wasn't ordinary silence. It was ancient, layered, heavy with the weight of forgotten civilizations and dead stars. Mason Holt drifted through it in the Wraith. Alone, the Earth hung distant in the sky behind him, no longer a warm blue jewel, but a pale eye, watching. He adjusted the flight vector manually. No autopilot, no satellite guidance. Every comms signal cut off the moment he passed into lunar shadow. That was by design. He didn't want them hearing this. Not the aliens. Not even Aegis. Especially not Aegis. Mission objective: inject artifact into alien lattice beneath lunar surface. Secondary objective: don't die. Seemed simple on paper, except the deeper Holt went into the moon's orbit, the less simple it felt. The Wraith's readings were off. Time dilation near the surface, microfractures appearing in hull, layers that should have held firm even inside a Jupiter storm, and the artifact. It had stopped pulsing, stopped humming. It was listening. "Command, this is Echo 6-5, Holt muttered into the dead comms out of habit. I'm nearing suborbital drill point coordinates 20 to 0.6 in, 40 for 0.7 W. Target site is beneath Mare Imbrium crater cluster. Approaching insertion trench, no reply. Of course, he sighed, flicked the console, and watched as the drill arm deployed a spiraled, titanium core gravitic borehead modified to tear through lunar rock like wet tissue. The Wraith settled into a low hover, struts biting into the powdery, regolith as its hull adjusted to vacuum pressure. Holt braced himself and engaged the primary thrust vector. The moon cracked open dot by the 400-foot mark. Visibility dropped to near zero. The tunnel wasn't supposed to be this long. Holt knew the spec's moon crust averaged around 30 to 40 kilometers thick, but this site was an anomaly. There were entire caverns under Mare Imbrium, according to Aegis scans, structures, even structures that's. When he saw them dot at first, it looked like minerals seemed strange, symmetrical striations lining the borehole as the Wraith descended deeper. But then the symmetry became geometry. The walls started to shift smooth, polygonal, with angles that no natural rock formation should hold. They shimmered under the ship's forward lights. Jesus, Holt whispered. This isn't a crater wall, it was a doorway. A tunnel carved eons ago by hands or claws not human. And the artifact began to hum again. Only now, it wasn't alone. It was around kilometer 6 when the lights died. No warning. Just darkness thick and absolute. The emergency red glows kicked in a second later, casting the cockpit in hellish shadow. Every console screamed in protest. Power reroutes failed. Atmospheric readings spiked into unreadable noise. Holt slammed his fist into the override. That's when the voice came, not through the speakers, not through air. Inside his head. You bring fire where ash sleeps. Holt froze. What the hell? A child of collapse. Clutching keys too. Locked stars. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't even singular. It was many, layered atop each other, dissonant and echoing through a space that had never heard a human thought before. You are not ready. Holt gritted his teeth, too. Bad. He didn't know if he was speaking to a memory, a psychic echo, or something still alive down here. But whatever it wasn't interested in negotiations. As he pushed the Wraith forward, the tunnel shifted again. Not in size, in space. Suddenly the craft wasn't flying down a tunnel, it was moving through a chamber. A hollow space that seemed to twist and refold behind him, erasing the entrance entirely. No way out, Holt muttered. Okay, the artifact lit up with a blinding blue pulse. The hum rose into a song. And the walls answered. The chamber came alive. Light rippled across surfaces that hadn't known illumination in millennia. Symbol-zillion glyphs glowed across Blackstone. Spires rose from the floor, resembling instruments, or terminals, or perhaps something far worse. And in the center of it, all suspended in midair by threads of magnetic gravitic energy, was the core. It looked almost identical to the artifact Holt carried, but it was enormous, 2 stories tall. Spiraled like a shell, carved with fractal patterns that made the eye ache. It was alive. Or at least aware, and it knew him. The Wraith lurched as the artifact and Holt's cargo bay began to pull toward the core. System screamed as containment fields flickered. Holt had 10 seconds to decide. Turn back. Not possible. So he did the only thing left. He released it. The artifact shot forward like a comet, drawn into the center of the alien core. The instant they touched, a shockwave tore through the chamber. Not physical, not even electrical. It was something else, a wave of memory. Not Holt's, not human. An entire race's extinction played through his mind like a film on fire. He saw their cities' towers that floated on magnetic oceans. He saw their machines built not to conquer, but to record. They weren't warriors, they were observers. Archivists of stars. And then they saw something they weren't meant to. A frequency, a color. A concept, the same one that now infected Earth's orbit. They called it the silence between vibrations, a force older than creation, not evil, just hungry, and their mistake. They tried to catalog it. The vision ended with the collapse of their core world. Their last act was to scatter the key's fragments of their knowledge encoded into the artifacts. Holt had one. Now, he had two. The chamber sealed shut behind him. The Wraith powered back up, all systems green. Not normal green enhanced. Every reading doubled. The ship was different, faster, sharper than any human craft had the right to be. The artifact hadn't just linked to the core, it had merged. But something else woke up. The chamber trembled. Holt glanced up just in time to see black limbs unfold. From the far wall, a being began to pull itself free from the structure. Its body was all angles and gravity wells, shifting like broken glass in oil. The voice returned, louder now. "We see you, Keybearer. We will come, we will rewrite your name." Holt didn't wait to ask what that meant. He hit the throttle and shot upward through the bore tunnel, engines blazing. The Wraith screamed into the dark, and behind him, the chamber collapsed, folding into itself like a dying star. Above, Earth waited. But so did them. When he breached the surface, everything had changed. The sky wasn't empty anymore. The dreadnought fleet had arrived. Thousands of ships, coiled in orbit like vultures made of obsidian and void. Their engines pulsed in perfect rhythm. And then they stopped. All of them, every single alien vessel froze in place because something had changed. Something had been activated, and Holt was now a beacon. The artifact was no longer singing. It was commanding. Aegis Division's emergency channel flared to life. They'd been watching, they'd seen everything. Echo 6-5, respond. You triggered a signal across the entire alien grid. Half the fleet just went dark, the other half is retreating. What the hell did you do? Holt looked at the stars. I lit a match. Earth was burning, not in flames. Not yet, but in frequency. Something had shifted the moment Holt broke the surface of the moon and lit up that alien core. Every satellite, every suborbital relay, every radio tower on the planet began to hum. A strange, low resonance. It was a tone, subtle, persistent, alive. The silence was broken. Now it was speaking back. Holt didn't have clearance to re-enter Earth's atmosphere, but that didn't matter anymore. The Wraith no longer obeyed Earth's rules, or gravity, for that matter. It descended into the upper stratosphere wrapped in a shimmering plasma shell, warping radar signatures and scrambling nearby military tracking systems. Fighter drones scrambled to intercept, but by the time they acquired the Wraith's position, it was already gone. Destination: Site Zero, Aegis's real base. Built into the Antarctic ice shelf, Site Zero was a myth, a Cold War relic buried under 60 meters of frozen steel and secret treaties. Not even Aegis operatives like Holt knew its location until their clearance was manually unlocked. His had just been unlocked. By someone, or something, watching through the core. The Wraith touched down without ceremony. The landing pad beneath the ice cracked open like an iris, revealing a long shaft into darkness. The ship descended. Holt tightened the collar of his Aegis flight suit and stared at the artifact pulsing quietly at his hip. You knew he'd come. Here, he said to it. No reply, but the hum was louder now. Inside Site Zero, everything was different. It wasn't just a bunker, it was a vault and a prison. Laboratories stretched in every direction, their walls lined with containment tanks, cryogenic tubes, fragments of alien technologies, and worse, living specimens, all silent. All watching. At the far end of the facility stood a blast door 30 feet high, sealed by biometric locks that hadn't opened in decades. Holt stepped forward, palm raised. The locks disengaged without protest, not because of his identity, because of what he was now. Inside the chamber was the Oculus, a sphere of black material, hovering, rotating slowly, and projecting thousands of holographic threads into the room. Timelines, signal maps, star charts, memories of places Holt couldn't name. At the base of it stood Director Selene Koss, the woman who founded Aegis, the woman who supposedly died in orbit 5 years ago. She turned. She hadn't aged a day. You brought it, she said. No surprise, no emotion, just certainty. Holt frowned. You're supposed to be dead. I was, the first time. She stepped forward, barefoot, eyes glowing with a pale silver tint. She gestured to the Oculus. This is why Aegis was created. Not to fight the aliens, not to defend Earth, to protect this. The core, the silence, the last memory of a dead civilization that tried to speak to the gods and got burned alive. You knew what it was, Hold said. I knew it was inevitable. The moment we picked up the artifact off Ganymede. The moment we realized it was calling for others, calling or warning. Koss smiled thinly. What's the difference when you're too small to stop either? The Oculus shifted, a projection rose, a star map highlighting a constellation in deep space. At its center, a void dot, not a black hole, not a supernova. An absence, the map zoomed closer, closer, until the void became a shape, a fleet. Not like the ones in Earth's orbit. This one was older, slower, hungrier, the true enemy. They're called the Architects, Koss said quietly. Or rather, that's the closest term we have. They don't conquer. They don't destroy, they rewrite, Holt whispered. Koss nodded. They reshape physics, recode biology. They turn life into something they can understand, and they're coming. Holt stared at the projection. The fleet was still like years away, but even now, their influence was spreading. Black clouds rippled across star systems like ink dropped in water, and this artifact, it can stop them, it can delay them, Koss said. And if we're lucky, it can teach us what the observers knew before they were wiped out. But why me? She stepped closer, eyes narrowed, because the artifact chose you. It's not a tool, it's a mirror, and it saw something in you none of us predicted. Suddenly, the Oculus flared. Every thread snapped inward, consolidating into a single point of light. A pulse shot out across the room. Hull dropped to his knees, clutching his skull. Images slammed into his mind. Memories not his own, civilizations folding like paper. Planets screaming in frequencies only the core could hear. And in the center of it all, a child, standing in a circle of light, arms raised, eyes blank. Power surging from their chest like a living star. It was him, but not him. Another him, a version that never stopped the silence. A version that joined it. He gasped, stumbling to his feet. Koss stared. You saw it, didn't you? What the hell was that? One of 1,000 timelines, all converging. The core doesn't just store memory, it predicts, it prepares. And every future ends the same way unless we do something different. So, what's the plan? Holt asked, rubbing his temples. Use me as bait, as a weapon. She hesitated, then, as a signal, before Holt could reply. Sirens blared through Site Zero. Aegis security rushed into the room, weapons drawn. Stand down, Koss barked, but they weren't pointing at her. They were pointing at Holt. Mum, orders just came in from Command Override Theater, one of the agents said. Subject Holt is to be detained immediately. Repeat, immediate containment, full. Stasis protocol. Koss's face went still. You didn't authorize that. No, ma'am. It came from above. Holt backed away, hand on his sidearm. What the hell's going on? They found out, Koss said, voice low. The council. They saw what you became, what I became, not a soldier. Not a pilot. She looked at him, eyes sharp with something between fear and hope. You became the signal. The lights died. The core screamed. For 1 second, the entire world blinked. And when it blinked back, every network on Earth was hijacked. Televisions, phones, radios, screens in shopping malls, tablets on bedside tables. And on every one, Holt's face, staring straight into the camera, blank-eyed, glowing. His voice. The Architects are not coming. They are already here. This is your last dawn. Choose silence. Or become something more. Panic spread instantly. Markets crashed. Flights grounded. Military forces launched into DEFCON protocols, and above it all, in orbit, the dormant alien fleet. Reactivated. Not against Earth. Against the new signal rising from Antarctica. The core had made its choice, and the Architects, they'd heard it, back. In Site Zero, Holt collapsed. The glow faded from his eyes. Koss dropped to her knees beside him. You weren't supposed to broadcast yet. She whispered. I didn't. He gasped. It wasn't me, it was the future you. It's bleeding through. The security agents were shouting now, trying to subdue the system. But none of their weapons worked. Every piece of tech linked to Holt's pulse. His heartbeat was a master key, and far above, just outside Mars' orbit, a hole tore open in space. Not a ship, not a gate, a wound. Something stepped through. Tall, angular, draped in gravity like a cloak. Its skin shimmered in symbols Holt saw in the chamber beneath the moon. The first architect, Koss whispered, "We're out of time," but Holt stood tall. "We're not done yet." He turned toward the Oculus. "I need to remember everything." It opened, and the storm began. Lightning that wasn't lightning tore across the ceiling of Site Zero's Oculus chamber, arcing from the black sphere to Mason, Holt's outstretched hands. The blast doors groaned under the weight of seismic waves rippling through the Antarctic, bedrock born from dreadnoughts slamming into Earth's upper atmosphere. Around him, chaos blurred alarms screamed, power conduits ruptured in white-hot flares, and data screens streamed unreadable glyphs, but Holt didn't move. He stood in the heart of it all, half man, half something else, as the last surviving artifact began to open, not physically, but like a mind unfolding, reaching, testing. Director Koss screamed something behind him, voice cracked with desperation, but the words were meaningless. Holt wasn't hearing with ears anymore. The signal was everywhere, not just in the air, but inside him, threading through his veins like liquid thought. They had found Earth again, after the failed trap in the outer system, after the detonation he barely survived. He drifted for weeks in the wreckage of the Wraith, kept alive only because the artifact refused to let him die. It had changed him, not completely, but enough. He was its echo now. They didn't understand that yet. Neither the ones who ruled Earth's fractured governments, nor the incoming wave of biomechanical intelligence sweeping toward the planet. They all saw him as a symbol, either salvation or contamination, but he wasn't either. He was what came after. When the storm broke, it didn't come as fire. It came as silence. The invading fleet entered Earth's orbit without weapons drawn, surrounding the planet like a new shell. They didn't demand, didn't speak. They simply waited. It wasn't surrender, it was harvesting. Holt felt it the moment they began, sensing with the residual frequency from the old artifacts, the one now pulsing inside his skull. He knew Earth didn't have hours, maybe not even minutes. Koss tried to initiate a failsafe, some buried doomsday protocol, but Holt stopped her with a look. "You'll kill the world trying to save it," he said. Then he turned toward the sphere. It was alive now, fully conscious, and in it Holt saw everything: the wars that had come before humanity, the civilizational cults, the failed resistances across dying galaxies. And yet, he also saw something else, a fracture, a moment, a choice. The alien code didn't just infect, it mirrored, echoed, and in him, it had found something different. A broken pattern, a will that didn't bend. Holt stepped forward, letting the artifact wrap its final tendrils around his spine, through his nervous system, into his thoughts. He didn't resist. He offered a signal back, not submission. Not compliance, a challenge. The chamber detonated. In pure light, when Koss blinked again, Holt was gone. So was the artifact. The invading fleet halted, froze, systems across their vast network began to desync. Not violently, but like a question that had no programmed answer. Earth's sky cleared, no sound, no celebration. Just relief stretched so tight it bordered on madness. Days passed, weeks, no counterattack. No messages. Holt became myth again, the man who vanished inside a sphere and made the universe pause. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was breathing room across military outposts and hidden bunkers. Analysts argued whether the enemy had been defeated or simply confused, but Koss knew the truth. She'd seen his eyes at the end, human, but not quite, defiant, and somewhere, far beyond deep space, something stirred. A ripple in the dark, a new signal, not from the enemy. Not from Earth, but from something ... in between. A familiar voice whispered through a broken satellite on Mars. "I'm not done yet." Then silence. For now, want more like this? Subscribe and drop your theories in the comment solely on Flixor.